all have AWS Cloud9 installed and up and running. If you don't have that environment, then you are behind at this point, so I encourage you to go and get that as soon as possible. Once we have AWS Cloud9 up and running, we can go ahead and actually cancel out. We can just get rid of our hello world. We're not going to need that for today's lecture. Today's lecture, we're primarily going to be focusing on the bash shell. So let's go ahead and maximize this screen. Let's make this screen a little bit smaller if we can. Sorry, it's a little bit finicky. Let's make that a little bit smaller. And cool. Let's get started with our demo today. So there's a couple things that I want to work on, first of all. So the first part that we're going to be working on is the bash demo. So bash is the command line. You're going to hear a few different words for this. You're going to be hearing bash, the command line interface, the terminal. All of these kind of mean the same thing. There's some nuanced differences between the different terms, but for the most part, they are all referring to the same thing. So when we look at our command line interface, it's basically our way to tell the computer what to do, and we're talking in the language that that the computer talks in. So here are some simple commands, and these are just commands that you're going to want to memorize or have them written down. If you want them for reference, I have a whole cheat sheet of different bash commands that you can reference on Canvas. So the first and one of the most important commands that we're going to have is ls. This stands for list stuff. So if we enter and press and see what ls gives you, it says hello world and readme.md. So inside of whatever directory we're in, so we're in environment, we're seeing a hello world file and we're seeing a readme file. Now let's say that we don't want to be in environment. Let's say that we want to go up a directory. So let's say that we want to go to this little tilde. And I'll explain what this tilde is after we've gone there. So we want to change directories, and that's abbreviated as cd. And then we're going to go up a directory, and the shorthand for doing that is cd ... So if we want to go to environment, all we have to do is say cd environment. Now, note that I've typed in env, and now I can actually tab complete. So I press tab, and it'll complete the rest of the directory for me. So it's going to go to cd environment. So now we can also do cd and specify an absolute path. Instead of a relative path, which was I want to go one up relative to where I am, you can also say I want to go right to the root directory, which is what tilde represents. So if I do cd tilde and then press enter, it'll take me exactly there. Similarly, you can do cd environment, and then that will also do the same thing. For those of you who haven't noticed, I'm using an app called Keycaster to show exactly what commands I'm typing in this bottom left corner. So if you have any questions about what I'm typing, feel free to refer to those to the Keycaster exactly. So some other things that we're going to want to talk about. So from here, we also want to talk about making a directory. So if we want to make a new folder, let's say we want to make a folder for lecture 3. So we want to make a directory, and that's shorthanded to mkdir, and then we'll call it lect3 here. Now, if we do a list stuff again, ls, then we should see lecture 3. Amazon is really cool in that it actually highlights directories in blue, whereas files are highlighted in white. So now we should be able to cd into lect3, and then let's say that we want to make a new file here. So let's make a new file called demo.py, or demo.txt. We're not going to be doing any Python today, so let's just make demo.txt. Cool. So now we've made a new file, so the command to see all the contents of this directory, again, is ls here. One more thing that I wanted to go over here is, let's say we have a hidden file. So there's a concept of hidden files in bash, and the way that you hide a file is by putting a dot in front of it. So let's make a hidden file called .hidden.txt. Now, the beauty of this is when you do ls, it's not going to show up. It shows demo.txt and nothing else. I'm actually not sure what this space is doing in front, but in general, you're only going to see non-hidden files. So if you want to see all files, including hidden files, you got to do ls-A. So that's about it for ls. One thing that I wanted to talk about before we move on here is I wanted to talk about the idea of absolute directories versus, absolute path versus relative path. So again, if we want to go up one level, we can do cd dot dot, which will get us to environment. If we want to go up 2 levels, we do something like that. So this should put us back at root. So if we go here, before I do that, let's talk about PWD. So PWD is going to print the entire path of the current directory that you're at. So if I do PWD, it's going to give home EC2 user. Apparently that's the path that I'm at. So if I go to environment and then lect3, and then I do a PWD, then this should theoretically print /home/EC2 user /environment/lect3. And it does do that. So PWD just prints out the entire path from /, which is the highest level directory, all the way to the current directory that you're at. Some other things that we're going to talk about now is moving things. So here we see a demo.txt. Let's say we want to move this to the environment. So we do mv as the shorthand, and then we say demo.txt. So that's where we currently are, and we want to move it to the environment folder. So we could do environment like this, and that should work totally fine. So now if we do an ls, this is completely blank. Again, there's some weird bug with this weird tab. I'm assuming it's related to the hidden file, but regardless of that, this is completely blank. But if we go up and we do an ls, now we should see that this demo.txt exists. Now the other option we have is, let me undo that. So we're gonna move this back to lect3. So this / just means the current /lect3. So lect3 is a directory inside the current one. You could also do something like this. It's just better practice to do the /, which means the current one, just in case you have lect3 as some random other directory or something that you don't know. It's just better to always specify the current directory / whatever you want. So we're going to move it back. One more thing I wanted to say here is we can do a mv of demo. Now if we do an ls, we're not going to see demo.txt. So let's go into lect3 and do an ls, and we should see demo.txt. So now we can also do a demo.txt, and then we can move it up one directory. And this should also move it to environment. So again, we see nothing here. If we go up and then do an ls, now we see demo.txt. So these are different ways that we can move files, we can copy them, etc. Oh, and speaking of copying, if we just do cp instead of mv, then it will make another copy of it. It will make a hard copy of it. So we can actually do cp demo.txt to /lect3. And now if we do an ls here, demo.txt exists. But if we go to lect3 and then do an ls, then you should still see demo.txt. Great. So that's how we copy files, that's how we move files, etc. Let's think about hello world in the world of bash. So these are the absolute commands that we want to use for file manipulation. So now let's move on and think about what hello world would look like. So in Python, our hello world is going to look something like print hello world. Print doesn't really do anything in bash, and to prove it, I'll do that. It's a syntax error. So it doesn't like that. So how we do it in bash is we actually do echo hello world. So if we do echo hello world, it'll print hello world out to the output. So this is called the input after the $, and then this is called the output, anything that it prints out. So that's how we do a hello world. Now, one thing that I want to talk about in Bash that's really, really interesting is the ability to chain different commands. And one thing that I want to talk about before we do that is the ability to write out to a different file. So we're going to talk about these in conjunction. So we know that echo hello world is going to print hello world out to the console. Now we have this very, very interesting command that is a double greater than sign. And if we do this, it's going to pipe whatever is the output of that file into, or the output of that command into whatever destination we get. So in this case, let's say we do demo.txt. So this is going to take as an input this, and then it's going to figure out what the output is. So that was hello world, and instead of taking that hello world and printing it out to the console, it's going to write it out to demo.txt. So if we open up demo.txt, we should see hello world written here. Cool. So that is how you pipe commands into a file. Now, you can override the contents of a file completely. So for example, if I want to say hello Sresh here, now if I add this to demo.txt, now when I open demo.txt, it should actually say hello world, and then on a new line it's going to say hello Sresh. Because the double greater than adds to the file. But if I want to override the contents here, let's say I want to say hello CS490, and then I want to write this out to demo.txt, this is going to override the entire contents of a file. Oh, sorry, a couple typos. So this is going to override the entire contents of demo.txt. So if you do vim demo.txt here, now it's only going to say hello CS490. Now, let's say that I am writing out to a file and I don't want to open it in Vim because it takes a lot of time to do that. You can actually read the contents of a file by doing tail demo.txt, and that's just going to print the last 10 lines of a file onto the console. So if I tail it, it's just going to say hello CS490 here. Now, last thing that I want to say is you can actually combine commands together in two different ways. So you can do echo hello Sresh, let's say that again, into demo.txt. But instead of pressing enter, let's put a semicolon and then do a tail demo.txt. So this is just like a semicolon that you would see in Java or C++. This is going to run the first command and then run the second one unconditionally. It's always going to run both of them. So this, after we see this, what do we think we're going to see? We're probably going to see hello CS490 and then a new line that says hello Sresh. And that's exactly what we're seeing. The other thing that we can do is we can do something very similar, which is hello world 2. Let's write this out to demo.txt, and then you can do an and specifier here. And this is only going to run tail demo.txt. Let me move myself out of the way here. It's only going to run that if first command is successful. So for the most part, most of your commands are going to be successful, but some of them might not be successful, in which case we might want to use this. So most commands, once they run, they're going to return a value of 1. So in this case, this should return a value of 1 unless there's an error. So what should we expect this to say? Well, this is going to write out to a file and output nothing, and then it's going to override the content, and then we're tailing it, so we should only see hello world 2. Interesting. Oh, my bad. The reason that happened is because it's not a single and, it's a double and that we want to do. So if we go here, sorry, I'm seeing a little bit of lag while I record. So if we do a double and here, this is what's going to result in us seeing hello world 2. So the single and actually means we're going to run a process in the background. You don't have to worry about that for this class. But a double and actually means do the first command. If it returns successfully, do the second command in succession. All right, that is the basics of of Bash or the command line or the terminal for you. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I will answer them live. Thank you very much.